A ship is on fire at sea. The crew are missing. It's all over traditional and social media with photos and video. Normally you'd be fascinated, but not today, as it's your own company's vessel. So what do you do next? Engage with the media, try and explain factually what is happening, or bury your head in the sand? We've had quite a number of high-profile casualties in recent months, and how these incidents have been handled from a media and reputation management perspective has varied quite significantly. Now, as someone who's covered the shipping industry for over 25 years, I'm all too aware the default response of many companies in shipping is that of, we run a private business. We don't need to talk to the media. Followed up, potentially, with a grumble along the lines of, well, they only won't write about us when it's bad news anyway, which of course will be true if you don't attempt to engage at any other time. Now, taking a couple of incidents involving cargo fires on board ships in recent months, we've had the car carrier Morning Midas burning in the North Pacific and the Wanhai 503 ablaze off the coast of Kerala in India. Both the Morning Midas and the Wanhai 503s involved cargo fires, and in both cases the National Coast Guards, US and Indian respectively, were active in putting out media releases and or posting on social media, including photos and videos. So basically pretending to the wider world the incident wasn't happening really wasn't an option. For the car carrier Morning Midas, the crew initially tried to tackle the blaze before evacuating and being picked up by a nearby vessel, the Cosco Hellas. The Morning Midas then drifted for over 3 weeks, ablaze before finally sinking. As well as information from the US Coast Guard, there were regular media updates from manager Seatrade Maritime, which were widely quoted. Zodiac Management are a company that could be described as a typical large family-owned shipping business. They are generally media shy, but not unfriendly, and clearly in a crisis understand there is a need to communicate their version of events. When it comes to the Wanhai 503, the ship suffered a cargo fire and explosion off Kerala, India. 4 crew died or remain missing, while the remaining seafarers on board the vessel were evacuated by the Indian Coast Guard and Navy. Over the ensuing 2 months, the Wanhai 503 was forced out of India's EEZ as salvors battled the fire, and it is currently on the high seas still trying to secure a port of refuge. While there was plenty of communication from the Indian authorities, both local and national, as well as the Navy, the response from Wanhai has been limited to a short statement to the Taiwanese Stock Exchange after the incident occurred, and a single media statement issued over a week after the initial casualty. Filling the void from the owner's side of the equation was plenty of third-party sources, with information of, shall we say, varying degrees of accuracy. Wanhai is also a family-owned company, but publicly listed as well. However, beyond the required statements to the Taiwanese Stock Exchange, it has actually had very little in the way of public profile in recent years. Now, these are by no means the only incidents in recent months, and Wanhai is certainly not alone in its complete lack of communication. It is a quite common response, or more accurately, lack thereof. When I was thinking about putting this together, it occurred to me the obvious response would be, but you're a journalist, of course you think we should talk to the media. So I thought I'd ask somebody in the business of media relations and crisis management, Chetan Desai, Managing Director of Navigate Response in Singapore, what they see as the benefits of responding during an incident. Now, one of the points that Chetan makes is that of managing the company's wider business reputation in response to a casualty. Now, he says, responding quickly and clearly to an incident protects reputations, maintains trust with stakeholders like charterers, banks, insurers, regulators, employees and families. Not every incident will be headlining the news or will require a press release, but every company should have crisis communications plan in place to know how, when and who to communicate with. Silence or delays can allow speculation to fill the gap, potentially fueling reputational damage, regulatory scrutiny, or even litigation. More importantly, a timely response is simply the right thing to do, as it signals accountability and care in a high-stakes situation, he explains. Now, one could argue, given potentially the number of other parties putting out information, social media speculation, and so forth, that you can have very little influence over the narrative of an incident. In my experience, this is not actually the case. If an owner or management puts out a statement, most media will use at least a portion of it, as by its very nature of coming from the company in charge of the vessel, it is credible information. These statements also get picked up on social media. Chetan comments, you may not be able to control 100% of the narrative, but you absolutely can have a significant impact on it, especially in the early stages of a visible incident. By being first with the facts, acknowledging the situation, and showing concern for people and the environment, companies can earn credibility and shape how the story is framed. If you stay silent, you leave that framing entirely in the hands of others, such as news outlets, citizen journalists, and the public at large, he says. So the choice of remaining silent allows for misinformation and speculation to build into a negative narrative, which will impact the reputation of a company and is actually extremely hard to reverse once it gets established. Now, against communicating what is happening will almost certainly in some cases be the concern that there will be an admission of liability which can come into legal actions that follow a casualty. This is understood to have been a factor at play to a large degree in the silence from the owners in some recent incidents. So, should legal concerns in the future stop communications in the now? Chetan explains, communicating about an incident is not about assigning blame or taking immediate responsibility. In fact, it can take weeks, months, or even years to know what really caused an incident. The purpose is to be factual, yet empathetic, while acknowledging what happened, and then focusing on actions to be taken to rectify the situation, he explains. Every casualty will have its own unique set of circumstances, but one factor I can tell you that is 100% predictable is that people will be interested in what happens when things go wrong. It's human nature. So you have a choice: either ignore it and allow the incident to have its own narrative, where the owner and manager is almost certain to be the bad guy, or try and influence that narrative in a positive and factual way. The response that required will depend on the scale and location of the incident. Even something relatively small, such as container collapses on a vessel, can drive considerable media interest from the trade media and their readers, I can assure you of that. Should your vessel be involved in an incident where it's public scale, the interest and coverage will be immense, and you really would want to be prepared for that, wouldn't you?